Hi, this is Bruce Buffer, your voice of the Octagon, and you're listening to MMA Mental.
Welcome to this week's MMA Mental Podcast, which is sponsored by UK Fightwear and hosted by MMA Victor Radio, which also provides a great fantasy MMA site. Before we let you know who we've got on this week, we've got 4 great guests. Just want to give a few shout outs and let people know what's going on. As always, we'd like to shout out our other podcasts friends who are also part of MMA Victor Radio. We've got the Aunt Jimmy Show, Word on the Street. We've got the MMA Podcast, and we've got the Early Stoppage. So they're all part of our podcast family. So definitely please check them out. Also this week there's a contest on MMA Victor where you can win 2 UFC tickets. So go and check over. It's free to register on the site. You can either play free fantasy and play against your mates for bragging rights, or you can pay to play and you can win money or UFC tickets. So definitely check that out. Okay, let me tell you who we've got on this week's show. We've got another great lineup. We've got 4 guests. We open up the show with a friend of the show, a lady we've had on before. She's an up-and-coming fighter, an up-and-coming women's MMA fighter, and that's Kerry Hughes. She had a big fight at the weekend, and she's now 3-0 semi-pro. She's certainly one to watch. She had some big news for us with regards to her career going forward, which was great. Then we speak to another guy who will be fighting soon on XFC. We continue our relationship with XFC. It's always great to work with one of the biggest promotions, and we're joined by John Kofa, who's got a big fight coming up soon. And then we move on. We've got a couple of UFC fighters on. We've got David Mitchell, currently 1-2. His last fight coming off a win over Simeon Thorson. He's got a big fight coming up soon against Mike Pierce. It was great to have a chat with him, and he gives us his views on things so far, and also his views on his big fight. And finally, our last guest, we've got a true MMA veteran, a true UFC veteran. He's been fighting in the UFC for years, one of the longest running lightweights in the UFC, and he's got a big fight coming up soon against Yves Edwards, and that's Spencer the King Fisher. I was absolutely honoured to speak to Spencer, so hopefully you'll enjoy this week's interviews. Okay, we're now joined by a friend of the show, Kerry Hughes. Kerry Hughes fought at the weekend, and she went from 2-0 to 3-0. So firstly, Kerry, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me back.
My pleasure. It's always nice to get a friend of the show back on. We appreciate you coming back on. I really enjoyed chatting with you last time. Now, I know you fought at the weekend. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about who you faced, where you fought, and then talk us through how the fight went?
Yeah, I fought a lady called Grace Anderson over at Colchester United Football Ground on BCMMA 3 for their ladies bantamweight title. It went really well. Yeah, as I say, obviously I won 3rd round TKO due to strikes, and we took fight of the night as well, which was obviously a nice little bonus. So yeah, really happy.
That's fantastic. So you actually the fight went to the 3rd round. So you won in the 3rd round.
Yes.
So was it if you won fight of the night, was it quite a back and forth fight then?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, we're both strikers by trade, as it were. Grace has a predominantly K1 background, and there were quite a few nice sort of striking exchanges. I got a chance to break out my wrestling a bit more. Maybe, if I'm honest, I don't think I necessarily performed to what I'd have liked to with that, but I managed to get a takedown in the 3rd from a body lock, and that for me was good because it's the first time I've sort of taken a fight to the ground, and it's always nice to get over the small milestones like that, I think.
Absolutely. Now you say you won by TKO due to strikes. Were the strikes on the ground or on the feet?
On the feet. I sort of, as I let Grace get up, I controlled her head, and as she stood up, got a body kick that doubled her over, and then it just punches on the fence.
So as Baz Rutten would say, it was a kick to the liver.
Well, no, it was a right kick, I think. Liver's the other side.
Okay.
Kick to the floating ribs, I think.
But you got her nicely in it folded her up, and then you're able to get the finish.
Yes, yeah.
Brilliant. Now, I know as well that the fight wasn't the original fight you were supposed to have. Your opponent stepped up on short notice. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I was originally, as was billed quite heavily, I was supposed to be fighting Laura Howarth from ZT Fight School, who, I'm sure you know who she is anyway. It was quite a well posted fight. Grace, fair play to her. I mean, Laura pulled out probably 2 weeks beforehand, I think, and Grace stepped up to take the fight. So yeah, really, really good of her. I was absolutely gutted when I heard Laura had pulled out. We all invest a lot of time and effort and money and emotional energy and everything else into a fight camp, and sort of 6 weeks into your 8 weeks of hard training, being told your opponent's not available anymore it's absolutely gutting. So thank you very much to Grace for stepping in and filling the void.
And obviously doing a good job by the sound of it. For it to go to a third round and for to get fight of the night, she obviously put up a hell of an effort. Against herself. What was the reason for your opponent pulling out?
I don't know. As far as I'm aware, she's not injured. I haven't spoken to her, so I don't really know what her reasons are. I know she travelled to America for the tough tryouts. I don't know if it's got something to do with that, but as I say, I don't know.
Do you think that's the fight that will happen in the future, or you just put it behind you now and you move on?
I don't know. I mean, you can never say what's going to happen in the future. There aren't that many female bantamweights knocking about in England, so I'd say maybe, although whether I'd want that match up again, I don't know. I think it'd have to be with a signed contract next time, probably.
Yeah. Now, I know your first 2 bouts were semi-pro. Was this a semi-pro or a pro bout?
Semi.
Semi-pro, yeah. And now you're the bantamweight champion. Is that correct?
Yes, which is really cool.
So congratulations.
Shiny belt and everything.
So obviously, I'm going to assume that's your first MMA bout.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Well, congratulations. I'm sure it's going to be your first of many, but congratulations. Like you say about your little milestones, I think winning a bout is a huge milestone. So obviously, well done.
Yeah, it's amazing how girly I go when things like that happen.
I'm not going to accuse you of being girly in case you find me and give me one of those body kicks. But obviously, seriously, congratulations. Winning a fight is always tough, but winning a title is absolutely fantastic. So, what's your turnaround now? Obviously, did you take, if it was a grueling fight, did you take any knocks? You got any injuries from the fight?
No, I damaged my right hand on the last few strikes, but I've had it x-rayed and there's nothing broken. So it'd be short-term recovery on it. But no, other than that, I'm unscathed, thankfully.
That's good. Ideally, then, when would you like to get back into the octagon and fight again?
I don't know. I know my coach has put me forward for a couple of things, but I've not been matched for anything yet, so it's difficult to say. I doubt very much it'll be before early July now, in terms of making sure I get a fight camp and things. But I'll fight wherever I'm told to fight.
Of course.
So you never really know.
Just obviously make sure you're always ready, I suppose. And if the call out's there, then you get the chance to fight. Then you'll go and fight. Now I also know as a result of not just this weekend, but of all your performances so far, you were picked up by a pretty big sponsor on the UK scene. Do you want to let us know about that?
Yeah, that was absolutely fantastic. On Saturday, British Fighter announced they've taken us on as their first female-sponsored athlete, which at the moment they don't really do a female range, but they're looking to start designing one from what they've said. So, for me, that's absolutely fantastic. It complements my other sponsors nicely. And I'm really looking forward to working with them. And the team they sponsor are some absolutely fantastic MMA athletes, so it's quite exciting.
Yeah, I know they're one of the biggest on the UK scene, and I think it's fantastic that they've picked you up, especially. So are you officially then their first female fighter then to be picked up by them?
Yes, yeah, which it's really good for women's MMA in general. It's nice when you look at the fact that bigger brands are starting to recognise that the women's market for things like that is viable and worth branching out into.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I think it's right that the female fighters are starting to get the recognition they deserve. I think there's so much exposure at the moment with what's going on with Invicta and UFC, and I know there's other promotions, XFC, Bellator, and I think that's great because that's now filtering through, and not only are women now starting to realise they can come and fight because they can make it to the big leagues, but sponsors are starting to realise it as well, which is fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's nice to see that it's not it's not just the same old sponsors. You're starting to get a much broader spectrum. Supplement companies wanting to sponsor female athletes as well as male. It's those sort of little hurdles that are making all the difference.
Now, you mentioned to me off air that you've been approached by some other sponsors as well. Who else has approached you, and what other sponsors have you picked up?
In terms of approach, I started working with already prior to my site. I was E-Protein, who I already work with, a supplement company. There's a company called UK Sports Training who are working with myself and Arnold Allen, going through our personal training qualifications and things so that we can potentially look at teaching MMA training sort of qualifications. We're also working with obviously Octagon Wear, who sponsor me for my kit. And then there's a company called MMA Exfit, which is it's actually really cool. It's a studio-based fitness class, but using a lot of the moves from MMA, and it's a really, really good conditioning class for anyone who's wanting to improve their fitness, either just like generally sort of in a gym. But it's also really good for if you're actually doing MMA and combat sports. Like, the conditioning is really geared towards what you want to be improving on. So, yeah.
Is that a bit like an MMA type of boxercise then?
Sort of, but it's not so watered. But when they've put it together, they've been quite careful not to water it down too much. So it's not like a boxercise, as in the sort of jumping up and down. The movements are all true to what they should be.
Good. That sounds really promising then as well. That's obviously I think that's probably going to start growing. And I think as MMA grows, I think things like that are going to grow with it. I think there's so much MMA has grown so much already in a short space of time, but there's obviously a lot more expansion to come, and I think things like that are going to follow with it. But
definitely.
Go on, carry on.
I consider myself to be quite fit, but certainly by the end of it, I was in a heap the first time I did it. So it's definitely one for those who already have a decent level of fitness.
So obviously now that you've had your fight, you've obviously won, you've moved on to 3-0. You don't think you'll be fighting now till July. What happens with regards to your training? Do you take any time out after the fight, or are you straight back on it, or what's your routine?
It depends very much on the fight. After this fight, I've taken just this week off, more than anything just to give my hand time to recover, and I had a couple of niggling injuries leading up to the fight. Nothing too severe, but I damaged the ligaments in my knee a bit, and I dragged on the short head of my bicep a bit, so I had my arm taped up for a lot of the last couple of weeks leading up to it. So just really give myself a week to let everything recover properly, and then I'll be back into it. Straight back into it really. I mean, when you're not in direct fight camp, I'll still be training probably as often. It's just maybe the intensity kind of steps up when you know you've got a fight to work towards, and you gear it towards more specific things. But I'll still be, as of Saturday, I'll be back into full-time training.
Do you prefer it then when you're training specifically for a fight? Is that better for you?
I I don't know about better. It's more that when you haven't got a fight coming up, you're training more generally. So you're looking to learn new skills and improve on your knowledge base and develop yourself as a fighter. Once you fix a fight day in your head, you're not really so much looking to learn new stuff as to hone what you've got and develop your own sort of fight game and make sure that you're at the best you can be. But it's not really the ideal time to, 2 weeks out from a fight, you don't want to start trying to learn some fantastic new submission, because that's not what you're going to use. You're going to use what you've drilled and you've improved on. So the time when you're not gearing up for a fight is the time to learn those, add to your arsenal, as it were, and start to drill those and hone them and improve yourself all round as a fighter, really.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, obviously, I really appreciate you coming back on today. I was really, really pleased when you contacted me and told me how your fight had gone. It was brilliant news. I can't wait to see you get back in there and continue to work up the MMA ladder. Obviously, you've made big strides since you started, and especially now you're being picked up by someone as well established as British fighter. I think that's fantastic. So, but before we do let you go, obviously, as always, I'd like to give you a chance to do any shout outs. I know you've mentioned some of your sponsors, but you feel free to mention them again. You want to thank anybody that helped you get ready for this fight. I know it's when you're fighting, it's very much you fight on your own, but I know preparing for a fight, it's very much a team thing. And also let people know about your Facebook and your Twitter as well.
Yeah, thanks so much. Firstly, just like to say thanks to everyone who's helped me. Obviously, this last fight I did it for St Francis Hospice and was raising money for them. They really good charity. They look after terminally ill adults with like dissociative or degenerative disorders and cancer and things like that. And so far I raised over £500, so that's really, really good. Thank you ever so much to everyone at BKK Fighters, obviously Gonzo, Arnie, Sean, Jack, the Bear, Tim, Dave. There's so many people. Corey. I've started naming people now, so I have to try and remember everyone. But absolutely everyone there is a big, big help, and there's no way I could do it without them. Also, on this fight camp, I travelled up to Tsunami in Cambridge quite a lot, so thank you to everyone there who's really helped me get ready. And then my sponsors, E-Protein, Sentia, MMA Exit, British Fighter, Octagon Wear, back up and running, UK Sports Training, and my wonderful nutritionist, Kato. And everyone on Twitter and all the people who come and watch MMA and support women's MMA and helping us all improve. So thank you.
No problem. And your Twitter is at AFC Angel, is that correct?
Yeah, it's a hangover from the days when I loved football.
So people can follow you at AFC Angel, and obviously your Facebook, Kerry Hughes. Well, thank you very much for your time.
And thank you very much for having us back. It's been really good to chat.
My pleasure.
Okay, we're now joined by John the Potter Kofa. John will be fighting at XFC 24 against Chad Livingston. John, thank you for joining us today.
Hey man, what's up?
Well, obviously,
thanks for having me.
My pleasure. You've got a big fight coming up, fighting at XFC 24. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about your background in mixed martial arts. You've been fighting professionally since 2008. What got you into mixed martial arts?
I've pretty much been wrestling my whole life. I started wrestling when I was in second grade. Wrestled all the way through college. And then after college, just sort of fell into it, it just sort of developed on its own. I don't know if I ever had a huge grand plan behind it. It just sort of took it fight by fight and day by day, and it just sort of developed on its own, like I said.
I think it's certainly a natural progression from wrestling to mixed martial arts, and I think it's been said by numerous people that obviously wrestling is arguably the best base of mixed martial arts. Did you just feel that it was just your natural way for you to go from wrestling into mixed martial arts?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've held jobs as well, but I think the desire to compete, and be competitive and and just always have that kind of team cohesion, amongst guys. It's just kind of natural to me, and it just kind of, I like it, so I just sort of gravitate towards things like that. And, going back to where we started about how I got into it, I think that's a huge draw for me there. When I was done wrestling in college, I don't think I was done competing. I don't think I'll ever be done competing. One day when I'm done fighting, I'm sure I'll find something else to do. Obviously not fighting or punching someone in the face, but maybe tennis or golf,
So you just got the drive to compete then, regardless of what sport that is. You're something you just love to do.
Yeah. But I mean, for now, I love fighting, and I'm still able, and so that's why I do it.
Obviously, with your wrestling background, you've got quite a few of your wins have been by submission. How was the transition from the wrestling base to learning the submission side and the jiu-jitsu base? How did that come about? How did you find that?
Again, that was a long time ago. I feel like that was, even though it was only, I got into jiu-jitsu maybe 2007, early 2008-ish, and so it's hard to recall a lot of that, because I just sort of fell into it. But it definitely makes for a good transition. You're used to grappling, you're used to being on the ground, obviously with a different set of rules and limitations, etc. But like most wrestlers and myself, I think we all kind of fall into wrestling, into grappling, and make it for an easy transition. Just a different set of rules and basic mechanics.
And how about the striking side? Because obviously in wrestling that's something you don't do at all. How did you find the striking side to it?
I fell in love with striking just simply because I love boxing. I think if you look at a lot of my fights, you see a lot of true mixed martial artists, I guess. A lot of my fights stay on the feet, and some of my fights, all we do is just bang for 15 minutes. I have other fights where we have gone to the ground and stayed on the ground. Some fights have been on the feet and on the ground. So, I think I feel like I've succeeded and done well with my stand-up simply because I sort of fell in love with it so quickly, and I really, truly enjoy training, stand-up.
I mean, with regards to your MMA record, you built up a good record. You're 7-3. What are you so far? What are your personal highlights?
I think every win is my own personal highlight. I look at every win, the same. Some are bigger than others, but I look at like my professional debut. Me personally. Granted, it wasn't a big fight and wasn't a big organization or show like that, but my professional debut, winning that, that to me that was good. I won a title here in Georgia against another undefeated fighter, and later on in the year, I was awarded a upset of the year. And I think as far as a personal thing, those two wins stand out to me the most. Winning the fight to get in the house of the Ultimate Fighter, it was only a one-round fight, but, it was something that, nationally televised, and it was my entrance into the UFC and to get onto the Ultimate Fighter. So I think that, that's another big win for me as well, even though that was, an exhibition. But, I still look at it as a win and a personal victory, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I was going to obviously bring that up. Of course, you were on the Ultimate Fighter Live. That was the first season with that kind of concept. You fought a UK guy, actually. Obviously, I'm in the UK. You fought Mark Glover to get into the house. What was your experiences like on the Ultimate Fighter?
On the entire show, you mean, or just the fight with Glover? Sorry.
Sorry, on the entire show. What was your overall experience of the Ultimate Fighter?
It was a great show. It opened a lot of doors for me. Financially, it helped me out huge. The biggest, I was able to pay off student loans. That was nice. But as far as the experience goes, it was a great experience. I made lots of good friends. It led to me getting to go to California for 8 to 9 months just as a Christian.
I mean, you thought.
Back on it and expect to have done better because I feel like I fell short on those fights that I lost. I felt like I had really, really good fights, but fell short there in the end because of a mistake here and there. And so I hate to think about that, but aside from that, it was a great experience.
And obviously, you fought twice in the UFC as well. What was your experiences like fighting in the UFC?
Well, I guess it's most fighters' dream to fight in the UFC. Mine was to stay in the UFC. I guess I always felt like deep down inside like I would be in the UFC one day, and then when I got there and I dropped those 2 fights in a row, which ultimately led to my release, that was pretty devastating. But now that I've had time to look back on it, it's I'm still fighting, I'm still doing what I love, and it's still a part of me regardless. And losing those 2 fights, I don't really feel like that defines me as a fighter by any means. But still upsetting to have lost those. But it is what it is.
They were both pretty competitive fights as well. I mean, if I remember rightly, you won Fight of the Night with Justin Lawrence, didn't you?
Yeah, we got Justin Lawrence and I got Fight of the Night. He ended up getting that really nice head kick knockout on me, as much as I hate to say it. But, I feel like I had a good fight.
Yeah, it was a good fight.
Yeah,
so obviously, moving on.
Can't make mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good fight. I mean, moving on, obviously, on to XFC 24. You're facing Chad Livingston. It's fair to say you're a lot more experienced than Chad. What are your views on Chad as an opponent?
Hang on with it. Sorry. My views on Chad as an opponent?
Yeah.
I'm not the type of person to take anybody or to underestimate anybody. Do I have more experience than Chad? I mean, maybe, but as far as fights goes, I mean, he has a lot of amateur fights. I look at those as fights. Doesn't matter where you've been or what you've done. I don't think. So I don't take him lightly by any means. I think that'd be a huge mistake to take anybody lightly. So he's another fighter and trying to get wins, and he might even be. He's probably really, really hungry. I'm somebody that he's looking to really take out. I'm sure because maybe he thinks that'll help his name or something. But so I don't take him lightly. I look at this just like I look at every other fight. Train hard for it, take him serious, and I'm a professional fighter, and I take it serious. So I don't underestimate anybody.
Yeah, I think that's the right attitude.
I'm sorry. What?
That's the right attitude because obviously you are a big name, and if you certainly don't want to be you don't want to give that name over to somebody else. You want to keep your record going. Is this fight at lightweight or featherweight? Because I've seen you listed as fighting at both weight classes.
Yeah, I prefer to fight at 145. I was on the show at 155 just because that was sort of how I got in. But I probably fight. It's always kind of dependent on when you're fighting in local shows, especially around here in the southeast. You sort of take what you can get. So sometimes I'll fight at 45. Sometimes I fight at 55. That title that I won back in 2011, that was actually a little class up. But, I had an opportunity to take on an undefeated fighter, for a belt. I'm not going to say no to that. So, that was why I bumped up there. It just depends. But 45, I think, after doing what I've done, I think I just need to stay at 45. And that's where I know I'll be the most competitive.
Yeah, I think that's a wise move because obviously, especially being a wrestler, you want to be able to use your size and strength to your advantage. And if you can fight at 145 and be strong at 145, it makes sense to stay at 145. Who were obviously the fight? We're a few weeks out from the fight. I think it's about 4 weeks away. Who are you training with in preparation for this fight?
Well, I'm back in Atlanta now. I was out in California for a while, just kind of having fun and training out there. But back in Atlanta, I trained at multiple gyms in Atlanta. Atlanta's kind of like a melting pot. It's kind of hard to explain to some people who just come from one gym. But I train at probably 4 different gyms here in Atlanta. I train with the Warriors Legion, which is Brian Stan's gym, you know. There's lots of great talent over there. Douglas Lima, one of the Bellator guys, he trains out of that gym as well. I'm over at another gym called X3 in Atlanta. They got a lot of up-and-comers as well as really, really standout local guys. There's a gym right down the road from where I'm living called Iron Clutch. I train there because it's just so close. My brother actually does my strength conditioning for me, and we got a full setup in his garage, or we go over to the gym I just mentioned, Iron Clutch. So I'm kind of all over the place right now, and I'm also working. I work as well, so it's good to have all those gyms to utilize, my time as well. So some mornings I might have to work, so that way I have the rest of the afternoon and evening to train at a different place. Whereas maybe I'd have to train here in the morning on a different day.
How hard is it to incorporate your training around your working?
Yeah, it takes a lot more planning. I mean, I don't really consider it hard because I want to be there. I enjoy being there. And, it'd be easy to come home from work and be tired and go sit down and sit around. But, that's not really me. I typically have to keep going anyway. So I don't really find it that hard. It's just it puts a lot of miles on my vehicle because I'm driving all over Atlanta. Those of you who aren't familiar from Atlanta, it can be kind of a pain in the ass to get around. But it's worth it to me, though.
With regards to the 145 weight class, how much weight will you have to cut to be at 145 for this fight?
Right now I'm at about 165, so I'm looking at about 20 pounds. I'm sure if I wanted to, I could get a lot heavier, but I stay pretty lean as is, so I mean it'll still be a pretty significant weight cut for me. Nothing too impossible or nothing I haven't ever done before, but it's a good weight drop for me. But
how big will you be on fight day?
I'll get up to about 160 maybe.
That's brilliant. It gives you such a good advantage then, especially with your wrestling background. It's just such a
yeah, you'd think that, but I don't know how much of an advantage that is either. I know Chad. I know from what I've seen, he's fought at 155 as well, and I've seen pictures of him. He's just like a pretty big fella himself, so I'm sure he's cutting probably the equal amount of weight. So I bet we'll both step in the cage about the same size. I think we're gonna equal each other out in that department.
It's certainly going to be a great fight, especially what you just said there about the weight. I mean, it's if you're both coming down from the same size, it's going to make the fight even more interesting. I know we're a few weeks out, so I know you've still got a bit of a way to go. So obviously, I wish you all the luck for the fight and for the rest of your training camp. I appreciate you giving me your time today. I was looking forward to having a chance to speak with you about what you've done so far and obviously about this fight. But before we let you go, John, I just want to give you a chance to do any shout-outs. Do you want to shout out any friends, family, and also and obviously any sponsors, and let people know about your Facebook and your Twitter?
You can follow me on Twitter right now at coferpottery.com. That's COFERPOTTERY.com. I have a Facebook page, but truth be told, I don't really keep up with it that much. So the best thing to do is just follow me on Twitter. I'm working on some sponsorships right now, so I don't want to say anything just yet. Here in the next week or so, I should have all my sponsors finalized, and then I'll be able to get more of a shout out once everything's finalized.
No problem. Well, we wish you, I know we're a few weeks out, so I wish you good luck with the rest of your training, and I'll be looking forward to seeing how the fight plays out.
All right, man, I sure do appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. Thanks, John. Speak to you soon.
All right, later, buddy.
Bye. Okay, we're now joined by UFC welterweight David Dowdy Mitchell. First of all, David, thank you for joining me today.
No problem.
Okay, let's. We're obviously going to talk about your latest win and what you've got coming up. But before we do that, I'd just like to go into your background a little bit. You've been fighting professional mixed martial arts since 2006. what got you into mixed martial arts?
I was doing a lot of bodybuilding and a little bit of boxing and just working out a lot and just kind of figured out how to take the fitness thing to the next level. And I saw it on TV and was like, man, I think I could do that. And came to Santa Rosa, California, and met Dave Terrell and just started training. And trained for like a year and a half, and then started fighting and just kept winning. So I just kept at it.
It's interesting that you mentioned there that you come from you started doing bodybuilding, because obviously I've spoken to a lot of people and they'll talk about different backgrounds, and a lot of the time there's a combat sport in there, whether it be karate, boxing, kickboxing, wrestling, but not bodybuilding. So what made you go from bodybuilding to mixed martial arts?
Well, I was never really had the build to really get big. I was just trying to get as strong as I could, and I really just enjoyed it. It was something fun, to feel like do something every day you couldn't do the day before. And so I was trying to figure out something that I would really be, good at, and that I could do. I felt like, all this exercise in five hours a day, or, every day, and eating this perfect diet, and then it's like, to what end, what am I going to do with this? So when I saw the mixed martial arts, I kind of just knew. I was like, I want to do that. It was competition, something about just getting in there with just one other person and just may the best man win. It just really appealed to me.
And you say obviously you'd done a little bit of boxing. How did you find the transition from doing the boxing and introducing the grappling, which is obviously completely different to anything you would have seen in boxing?
Well, I was just doing boxing for fun, and I was trying to get an amateur fight or something. I never competed really, but when I started doing jiu-jitsu, at first it was really tough, and all that muscle and all that endurance that I thought I had in the gym just was kind of for naught. But after maybe 3 or 4 months, it started clicking, and I actually ended up really enjoying the jiu-jitsu and getting much better at jiu-jitsu. I get addicted to things. I got addicted to jiu-jitsu. That's all I wanted to do. Is all I thought about, and it just within a couple of years, I was pretty good.
It's obviously paid off, because pre-UFC, you went 11-0, and you had 9 wins by submission, which is absolutely amazing. Have you got, what are some of your own personal highlights pre-UFC? Because there's some pretty big names on your resume.
He had a tough battle with War Machine. He was probably the biggest name, and McKenzie. I came into that fight in really good shape, and just it was just easy. I felt like the man fighting a boy. I just felt so much stronger than him. And Bobby Green, he just had a big win in UFC a while back. I saw. I beat him. He just was kind of fish out of the water. I explained the jiu-jitsu. At the UFC, it doesn't fly anymore, but when you're kind of at that lower level and the guys don't really have great jiu-jitsu, it's like taking candy from a baby, you're driving a Ferrari and they got a Peugeot or something and you're just smoking them. So I, was just blazing through a lot of fights like that. But, at UFC level, everybody's got a much more well-rounded game.
Yeah, you mentioned that. You mentioned two of the names you mentioned there were obviously Tim McKenzie and Bobby Green, and obviously, like I say, Bobby Green's coming off a big win. We've seen Tim McKenzie in Strikeforce, and you beat Tim in just over a minute, and you beat Bobby in just under a minute, which is absolutely fantastic. So, who do you train your jiu-jitsu with then? Because you've obviously got it to a really a high level.
Well, just working with Dave Terrell, he's probably one of the best jiu-jitsu guys on earth. He's just such a phenom, and he's like a savant. His level is, even to this day, I've never really seen anyone do anything to him, even pass his guard or I've never seen anyone choke him or tap him in any way. It's just, his game is just so phenomenal. So working with him and then all the other guys at NorCal Fighting Alliance, they're just on another level compared to, a lot of the jiu-jitsu out there. So it's just all no-gi grappling, hard, rolling rounds, 6-minute rounds, one after another, and just going with super tough guys. And you just kind of, really get comfortable being on your back and being in tough situations and just learn how to use your body and set hooks everywhere. And it's just like riding a bicycle. The more you do it, the better you get, I guess.
How big of a help was it training with somebody like David Terrell, who's obviously been there and done that, and has been and fought not just in MMA but in the UFC himself? How much of a help was that?
Yeah, it's like a confidence builder when you go into a fight or into a match or whatever. You're just training and you go, what can this guy do that Jake Shields, Dave Terrell, Diaz Brothers hasn't already done? So I've seen it, I've done it, and so I'm not really, like, when it comes to jiu-jitsu, I'm not really scared, Now,
obviously, pre-UFC, you went 11-0, and then you finally got the call up. You'd obviously, you'd earned it on in the shows you'd been in. How did it come about that you got the call up to face TJ Waldberger for UFC Fight Night?
I think when I first signed, I was supposed to fight somebody else, but I had what happened? I had an injury to the shoulder or something. Or no, that was after. No, the UFC wanted me to fight, and they wanted me to fight TJ, and I think I didn't realize, that I hadn't gone against somebody that really had that kind of level of jiu-jitsu. So I thought it would be easy, but it wasn't. And he's really tough, and he beat me up real good.
Yeah. But
when I lost that fight, Joe Silva came into the cage. He was like, "Man, you're a tough guy. We're gonna have you back." And it was that guy. We had a good fight, so can't complain.
No, I mean TJ is a great fighter. I've spoke to TJ as well. He's a good guy as well. And obviously there was quite a gap there between your first and your second UFC fight. Was that due to the injury you were just talking about?
Yeah, I just kept having problems with my shoulder, and my shoulder would always feel real weak. And it was really it started before I got into UFC, but it just kind of got worse every month, and didn't have the strength that I used to have in my arm. And it turned out that it was a really bad impinged nerve, and I didn't get it fixed till after. I just took some time off hoping it would heal, and I ended up taking that fight. It was kind of you're going to go to Brazil and fight Paulo Thiago, or your career's, you're going to be cut from UFC. So I'll do it. I was very weak, and people would hit me just with the lightest punch, and it would, make me just so much pain. I'd collapse on the ground, but I just toughed it out. I didn't train well. I just ran mostly, and then I went and fought in Brazil, and right after that, I got a surgery, or a little while after I got surgery, and got it fixed, and now it's much better.
So do you feel then, obviously, your next fight, of course, there was a layoff from that because of your injury. Do you feel then really the first time you really got to showcase yourself was against Simeon Thorson, obviously earlier on in the year, because you were finally healed? Do you think that was the first time you ever really got to showcase what you're capable of?
Yeah, I think that definitely that's true. Those first two fights, I was pretty badly injured, and I would say with Simeon, I was kind of just off surgery, but at least it was functioning correctly. The surgeon said that the nerve was 80% blocked, so you can imagine going from 20% ability in my left arm to 100%, or close to 80% maybe. It was a dramatic improvement. I was able to get in there, and also I kind of just realized that these guys are jiu-jitsu black belts, and they're well-rounded mixed martial artists. You're not just going to be able to go in there and grab a toe hold. You got to go in there and fight. And so with Simeon, I just went in there right from the opening bell and just fought him as hard as I could. And he was a tough dude, and he managed to survive it. But yeah, I felt like that was the first time that anyone really got to see what I could do. And I still felt like it wasn't 100%, but it was. It was much improved.
And obviously, it was a great performance. And it must have been such a relief as well to get that first win in the UFC, because you'd worked so hard to get there, and obviously then with the injuries, it must have been nice to get that win. Now you've obviously got a huge opponent coming up soon at UFC 162. You're facing Mike Pierce, and obviously Mike Pierce has has been on a good run and has probably established himself as either just inside or just outside the top 10 in that division. How do you feel about facing such a high-ranked and high-profile opponent?
I feel very grateful and honored that they would feel that I, was a worthy opponent to fight such a top-level guy, and that, I just got everything to gain from this fight and not much to lose. If I beat this guy, it puts me, like you're saying, like right up in the top 10 from nowhere, which is awesome. And so it's just it's an honor to fight a guy like that. This guy he's an awesome wrestler. He's been around. He's 11 fights in UFC. So yeah, it's a tough fight, but why not? Let's do it.
It's obviously a high-profile card as well. I mean, the card is stacked from top to bottom. I mean, your fight's the opening fight, and with what we've just said about yourself and Mike, and especially Mike being so highly ranked, the fact that is the opening fight shows you how stacked the card is. And of course, it's headlined by Silver and Weidman. You've got some huge names on the card. Does it add any pressure to you fighting on such a highly touted card?
Yeah, I guess so, but like you said, it's the opening fight, and you don't got to sit around and wait for everyone else to fight. You just get to get out there and get after it. So, any fight is going to be big, and at the end of the day, it comes down to the same thing. You just got to go fight. There's only one other person in there. But I'm pretty excited about fighting it in Las Vegas at MGM Grand. That was always kind of the dream, to go to Vegas, to the fight capital of the world, and fight. So this is like, it's kind of the ultimate for me. And, I fought on the same card with Anderson Silva in Brazil, and that was a huge fight too. So huge show. So, I fought 45 minutes in the octagon. It's nothing new to me. I like the pressure, and, I think the bigger the show, the better performance I'm going to give.
With regards to when you're training as well, is it easier to train and stay motivated when you're training for a fight rather than just training to stay fit?
I really just enjoy to train all the time, and what's hard to stay motivated was when I was hurt, and I still have little issues with my neck and stuff. But now that I'm healthy, I enjoy to train all the time.
Obviously, with Mike, we've seen his strengths. Obviously, he's a strong wrestler, and he's got some power in his hands as well. Do you feel you've got the edge with your jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, I give him power. I've seen the power in his hands, and I've seen, obviously, he's got great wrestling, but I haven't really seen him do any jiu-jitsu really at all. Definitely got the edge when it comes to.
Yeah, I agree. And obviously, I'm sure you're running through different things in training, but are you thinking that there's going to be times where you're going to be on your back in this fight and you're working from submissions from the bottom?
Yeah, always working on my jiu-jitsu from the bottom. I like being in guard. I'm real traditional like that. Like original Gracie jiu-jitsu. Having the 4 points and use both your hands and legs. So yeah, I've been working on that and stand up, and I don't know what his plan is. He might not want to take me down because I get a pretty good threat from the bottom. So we'll see. And if he wants to stand, I'm down to do that too. A lot of guys get knocked out pretty easily, and I'm not one of those guys.
No, like you say, you've trained in your boxing as well. Well, obviously, firstly, I really appreciate you coming on today. I know it was a bit of a short notice interview, so I appreciate you finding the time to come and have a chat with me. And obviously, I wish you all the luck for the fight as well. It's a great card, and it's certainly a great way to open the card. But before we let you go, I just want to give you a chance to do any shout-outs. I want to shout out any friends, family, sponsors, and let people know about your Facebook and your Twitter as well.
Yeah, I'm mostly just on Facebook. If you just look up David Mitchell and 10 Rose, you'll find me. I'd just like to thank everyone at NorCal Fighting Alliance and the Cesar Gracie fight team, and my main sponsor, Hayabusa, hooking me up with the keys and everything like that, and just my team, my friends, and my family. Thanks for all, supporting me when, in the good times and in the bad times.
Well, like I've already said, I really appreciate your time today, so thank you very much for coming on the show and letting me interview you.
Oh, no problem, man.
Cool. Good luck with your fight.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, we're now joined by UFC veteran, maybe even UFC legend, Spencer the King Fisher. Spencer, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, I've got to say I've been a huge fan. I mean, you are one of the longest serving fighters in the UFC, and especially in the lightweight division. I'm so excited to have a chance to speak to you. I've been such a big fan for a long time. Before we move on and talk about your UFC, I'd like to get a little bit of your background first. So you started fighting professionally in 2002, and it's fair to say at the time you started fighting, the sport wasn't established like it is now. What made you want to get into mixed martial arts?
Well, I think being from a small town, we were in a country town. I was big into professional wrestling as a kid, and it turned out that I was only 5'7". My hopes and dreams of being a professional wrestler kind of went out the window. And the UFC was around that time, and I was already training karate and started picking up kickboxing and dabbled in it a little bit, and then the rest is history. I just kept doing well and met the right people, and off I went.
I mean, you say the rest is history. I mean, I think that's a huge understatement. How was it that you came about and started training under the Militich fighting system? Because, of course, at one time, the MFS was by far the leading fight camp in mixed martial arts.
Well, I went to a Jens Pulver Pat Militich seminar the day after Jens had won the title, and in Wilmington, North Carolina, and met the guys and trained with the guys, and they said if I was serious about training and trying to make a professional career out of this, that I was welcome to come up and train with these guys, and so I packed my bags and moved to Iowa.
And obviously, we talk about Militich fighting system and these guys. I mean, I'm just going to reel off some of the names, and feel free to throw in anybody that I miss out. But the names that kind of always stood out to me, of course, Matt Hughes, Jens Pulver, Robbie Lawler, obviously Pat Militich, Tim Sylvia, who of course was the UFC heavyweight champion. I mean, you were by far the leading fight camp within the sport. Back when you joined the camp, weren't you?
Oh yes, yeah. In the original camp, whenever we were at a racquetball court, is where Pat originally had his gym at. And it was literally a racquetball room that had a wrestling mat inside of it. And of course, throughout the years, they progressed and got bigger and went to a bigger gym. But I think I was in the racquetball court, and there was a handful of guys beating the crap out of each other. So it really has come a long way. And again, at that time, not the sport was evolving, but not everybody was doing the things that the Militich camp was doing, and they, everybody brought their own style in, and the work ethic, I think, is what really separated the camp from the other gyms. These guys, they were wrestlers, and they had that work ethic installed in them, and I think with everybody else coming to the camp, that you had to either get with it, or you didn't last long. So a lot of guys come in from other places around the world. We had a lot of guys from UK came in. Ian Freeman came in. Lee Murray came in. There was quite a few guys that came in that really helped out as well. So it was a good tight group of guys.
I mean, obviously, as much as you've grown within that camp, and you've gone on to become one of the top lightweights. In the sport, you've obviously watched other people around you grow as well. We talk about, Robbie Lawler. He was this young kid that come out of nowhere. Of course, Matt Hughes was the most dominant welterweight champion up until recent history. Tim Sylvia, of course, come out of nowhere and shocked everyone by winning the heavyweight title. What was it like watching your training partners go on and have such great success in the UFC?
That was awesome. Tim and I had gotten there about the same time. He was there a little bit before I was, and just to see him and the progression that he made, walking through people winning the tournament in Hawaii, and just going on to win a world title was really encouraging. I'd say more so than anybody else for me being there with Tim, living with Tim, I always look at Tim for his hard work ethic, and that's one thing about Tim. He gets a lot of slack from people, but he's always come to fight. He always trains hard. And, I think seeing Tim do it and doing so well in the UFC, it just made me want to train that much harder and get to where I was going to be at and make sure I made it to the UFC.
I know one of the things that we always get as well when you're fighting is when we've got Joe Rogan commentating, and they always talk about the bond that you've got with Little Evil, Jens Pulver, and also about the training and the sparring sessions. Obviously, Jens Pulver, again, another pioneer, first ever UFC lightweight champion, and obviously that wasn't even his natural weight because he's gone on to fight at smaller weight classes. What was it like training and sparring with Jens Pulver and having such a explosive, as we've been told, explosive training and sparring with him?
Oh, it was great. Of course, Jens being the champion, had a lot of guys coming in, often, especially at the 55 division. We're coming in, all walks of life coming into that gym to, spar with Jens. But of course, I was probably his main training partner at that time, and another left-handed fighter as well. And we just had some wars in there, and people would get knocked down or knocked out, and there was, no checking on the guy. We'd set him against the wall and go on about it. So it was a really cool time, and everybody, I think we had 3 or 4 belts at one time in that gym. So, again, you had all walks of life. We had Rich Franklin and a lot of guys from Ohio coming in. It was just a really cool feel. I mean, I remember I got goosebumps going into training at the gym because, like I said, people were getting knocked out left and right. So it was almost like a fight when you went in there just to train. So a lot of people, actually they did it 1 or 2 times, were more or less sitting on the sidelines watching than competing. So.
Yeah, you mentioned there about the 4 bouts, and I was trying to recount it in my head because I remember at one point you pretty much were dominating every weight class in the UFC. I think the only bout you didn't hold from your fight camp was probably the light heavyweight, but you had Tim Sylvia at heavy, you had Rich Franklin at middleweight, you had Matt Hughes obviously at welterweight, and of course before Matt Hughes we had obviously Pat Miletich, and then of course you had Little Evil Jens Pulver at lightweight. I mean, it must have been just an amazing place to be around and to learn from people like that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there's so much talent in there. And, of course, with all the champions, you'd have people coming from all over the world to train with us as well. And everybody brought something in. So it was always a fun time to be there, whether it was wrestling, jiu-jitsu, or kickboxing. You were always learning constantly.
I think one of the things that stands out from your record as well, and it shows your level of training and especially cross training, is you've got 24 wins with 19 stoppages, but it's not all favoured to one way. You've got half which are knockout and TKO and half which are submission. It just shows that you would literally train in everything.
Mm-hmm. I think of course, the sport now you have to, and I think it's no secret that my kryptonite's been my wrestling. But, and a good thing, another thing about the sport, you're always constantly learning. It's always, you're never going to be the best at everything, so it's always important to keep learning. But recently I've been focusing nothing but my wrestling. I'm trying to leave everything else alone and really just focus on my wrestling for this upcoming fight and be prepared to go wherever the fight, to go wherever it happens, or and make sure that if anything, I'm the one dictating to where this fight takes place. Whether I'm the one wrestling or deciding to keep it spin, I want to be the one to be able to dictate this next fight.
Yeah, I'm going to go through and pick some of your fights and just kind of get your view on them, and then obviously, of course, we'll move forward and talk about your next fight, which is another a massively exciting fight. I mean, obviously, you debuted against a guy who was also debuting himself and has gone on to have huge success in the UFC, as you have. And you fought against Thiago Alves at welterweight, which, of course, isn't your natural weight class. Talk to us a little bit about that fight and how that fight played out.
Well, I remember I was supposed to fight on an upcoming Super Brawl leading up to that. I remember at the time my manager was Monty Cox, and he called and told me I was not going to be fighting on the card previously, and I was upset about it. And he asked, "Do you not even want to know why you're not fighting on this card?" And I really didn't care at the time because I was upset. And he said, "Well, you're going to fight in the UFC." And I almost hung up the phone. It was, of course, they didn't have the lightweight division at that point, and 70 was the only chance I had to fight. So I was happy to take it, and they told me that I was going to be fighting a guy that was a smaller Vanderlei Silva. But again, I didn't care who I was fighting at that time. I'd have fought anybody as they told me I could just to be there. But man, it was a dream come true. It was everything I ever wanted. And I think anybody who watches mixed martial arts, they don't know anything other than the UFC. So, of course, like anybody else, I was excited. And man, it was just the best experience ever. I mean, it kind of went a better way. I was able to keep the fight on the feet and, do what I wanted, and then finished off my back, and to show the diversity that I was able to do a little bit of everything.
Could you imagine, obviously, after that phone call and getting this what was obviously like you say, a dream debut, could you imagine all these years later you'd have had the career that you've had and the success that you've had in not just any promotion, but the number one promotion?
Like I said, it's hard to imagine trying to fight somewhere else after I've been with the UFC. I'm very fortunate through Joe Silva and Dana White to still be here. And, of course, I wouldn't be here if it hadn't been for the fans and supporters, and I think I've really gotten the respect for people that every time I go out there, I always go to fight, and that's never been a question. And, with my ups and downs and more downs as of late, I think it's because I always show that I'm always coming to fight. So, and I love to do so. So I think as long as I'm loving it, I'm going to keep on trucking with it.
You're certainly a fan favourite, and like you say, it's what you say there, but it's the heart that you show, and it's the fact that you fight to win, not fight not to lose, which of course we see in some cases as well, and the fans love seeing people that leave it all out there. Now, one of your more storied feuds, if not really a feud, but battles, of course, is your 3 fights with Sam Stout, another great UFC lightweight. You first faced him at UFC 58, which I know you took the fight on short notice, and I know you had to cut a lot of weight going into that fight. What was it like facing Sam Stout over the 3 fights? Because, I mean, you've had 3 fantastic fights. I think you might have even won 3 Fight of the Nights, if I'm right, as well.
Yeah, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think I got 3 bonuses on all 3 of those fights. I'm almost 100% sure I have, but Sam, you can't say one of our names without saying the other, because I get a lot of credit for those fights, but it takes 2 in order to get a fight of the night, and he brings it every time. I don't know how many fight of the nights he's got, but, when you put, you say my name, you have to throw his name right alongside it, of course. And the thing is, with Sam, our first fight, a lot of people don't know this, but I had sparred with him previously. Before that, he was getting ready to fight somebody. I don't remember who it was. I think it was Kenny Floyd originally, I think. But he came in there, and I sparred with him leading up to it, and I was literally sitting at home playing video games with my daughter, and Monty had called me and told me to put down the candy bar, which was funny because that's just me, and that's what I was doing. But he told me to go see what I weighed, that I was going to fight the UFC. This was on Wednesday evening, and the fight was on that Saturday. So Thursday I went in, and I was 23 pounds over from the 55 weight class, and so I went to cutting weight, and I knew going in, having to cut that much weight, that if I didn't stop him early, I was going to be in trouble. But looking back on that fight after watching it, of course I didn't win, but I felt that if I would have gotten that fight, I think that'd been a fair assessment of that fight. So it was close.
Would you ever...
The second time, of course.
Sorry, carry on, Spencer.
I was just going to say, in the second fight, I really wanted to make a statement with proving that I felt I was a superior fighter, being prepared that I'd go and show it. And I went out there and I did a good job, and it was again another good close fight that I got the nod on. And then the third one, you know, I think the only thing that cost me that fight was the takedowns for sure. The third fight, but again, Sam came to fight, and he always does, and we got to fight tonight again. So on that same note, I was kind of leaning toward retirement on that last fight, but I think that going in with that wrong mindset, going ahead and thinking I was going to retire, I think that kind of maybe, I don't know, I should never have thought that going into a fight ever. You know, you should never look at retirement going on your fight anyhow. I mean, of course, every athlete has to keep it in the back of their mind, but I did so well in that last fight that I thought I still had it in me. Dana thought that I had won the fight as well, so I'm gonna do it again.
Going back to the first time you fought him, obviously having to lose so much weight in such a short space of time, did it ever cross your mind not to take the fight?
No, would have been. You know, I think a lot of people, and I've kind of got away from it a little bit myself, but if this is a profession you're going to choose to do, you need to be ready all the time. So if that phone call does come, that you should be prepared to take it.
Now, obviously, you've faced Sam 3 times. Would you like to face him a 4th time, or are you happy that that's done?
Well, of course, in my mind, I wouldn't mind doing it again because, you know, we have such a history of it, and he got the last nod. So, if I could up it one more time, I would. But, you know, I think we've seen the best out of each other. And but if that fight was ever offered to me again, yes, I would take it. You know, he brings up the best of me, and I think I do to him as well.
Another fight I wanted to touch on, which was another fantastic victory, and what stood out about this one for me was the finish. And you faced a very young and green Matt Wyman, of course, and he's gone on to have good success in the UFC. And you won with a spectacular flying knee. What are your memories of the fight with Matt Wyman?
I have 2 parts to this story. First of all, going in, I didn't know anything about Matt Wyman. I knew nothing about him. I knew that he was a replacement and that I had better win, and I had better win than the right way. You know, of course, when you fight an unknown and I was trying to make a name for myself, and I was supposed to win this fight, you know, that I had better. So then I get to the fight, and maybe a little bit looking past him, he gave me everything I could handle, and the guy is extremely tough. And then after that, he went on to do great things. Matt also, though, you know, he and I were talking throughout that fight, and I think a little bit has to do with Tim Sylvia. Tim kind of got that started in the weigh-ins prior to that fight. You know, I was talking to his cornerman, and it was going back and forth, and it just carried on into the fight. But, you know, after that, Matt went on to do great things, and he and I started talking at one of the UFC summits, and talking about training together, and he came out and he come to prepare for a fight before, and I can't say enough good things about the guy. He's just gone out of his way to help me out, and some of the guys were at my gym, and super, you know, aside from fighting, the guy is a stand-up person.
Yeah, I must admit, as a fan watching Matt, I've always enjoyed not just his fighting style, but the way he portrays himself as well. I think he's always come across well. And obviously, he's another exciting fighter.
And he's tough as nails.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And he's shown that on more than one occasion in wins and in defeats. Now, before I want to talk about your fight coming up, because I mean, your fight coming up is such an intriguing matchup on paper because of the experience you've got and the experience your opponent's got. But before I do that, I want to ask you: you've had such a fantastic career to date, and of course, the career is still going on. What's your own, as of now, as of this moment, what's your own personal highlight from what you've done and what you've achieved?
I think just the people could consider me a fighter's fighter. You know, I like to try to think that I would fight anybody, and I always really come to fight. I don't want to lay down for anybody. I don't think I ever have. And I mean, but some guys get in with the guy they're going to fight, and they kind of give up before the fight's even started. I have never been that person, and you know, I always just want to be remembered as that guy that would fight in the drop of a dime and really go out there and fight my heart out. So I would say that as of right now, people would say that about me.
Yeah, I agree, and that's why I think that regardless of whether you've won or lost your fight, and we've seen this with a few fighters, you've always been asked to come back, because the fact of the matter is, if Spencer Fisher's on the card and if Spencer Fisher's in the fight's going to be exciting. That's just your style, isn't it?
That's right. I always try to be the guy that's in the other guy's face. Game plans are great and they're just that, but a lot of times, getting punched in the face changes that, and that goes out the window. But there's one thing about me, and that's for sure, is that I will always try to be in the guy's face. I will always try to come in and fight my heart, fight my heart out. So.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Now, your next fight, obviously, what I love about this fight is you've got two top lightweights. I mean, lightweight is probably my favourite division anyway, because it's such a stacked division. But I think, and I'm going on memory, I'm pretty sure yourself and your opponent, Yves Edwards, are the two longest serving lightweights in the UFC. Is that fair to say?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Sorry, I think you and your opponent, Yves Edwards, you're the two longest serving lightweights in the UFC. I think you two have been there longer than anybody else that's in the division.
Really? Wow, I didn't know that. I knew he had been. I know he's been around for a very long time, and I would even go as far as to say he was, when the UFC ended the lightweight division, that he was the uncrowned lightweight champion with his last win over Josh Thompson in spectacular fashion. I'd say, yeah, that he's been there. I've been watching these for the longest time, and I've always thought about that fight. And he was in other organizations before he came back to the UFC. And this fight being put together, I think it really has to bring the best out of me in order to pull off the W for this.
Yeah, you're right, and I love the fact you brought up the Josh Thompson fight as well. I mean, that was such an unreal finish. I think nobody saw that. The way he threw the kick and the angle it came from was very unusual. But I mean, this for me is it's like a dream matchup, because I mean you're both so well rounded. You've both shown in the past that you can submit from anywhere, top or bottom, and at the same time you're both known to stand and bang as well. How excited are you to get this fight with Yves Edwards?
It's exciting and nerve-wracking at the same time, and I think that is what's going to make this such a good fight, is that, a lot of times when I fight people, I consider myself a good striker, and on the opposite end of the ring of me this time is a guy who's had more fights than I've had and is really slick fighter. On that same note, I think I'm faster than he is still, and I have more explosion. So I think this one makes for a very tricky fight that could definitely be fight of the night, and I would go as far as say this is probably going to be the fight of the night. Of course, anything can happen. Perfect night, I go out there and I end this fight early, but man, I couldn't ask for a tougher opponent. And I think that, again, this is probably, every fight is just that, it poses its own threats, but, Yves is very well rounded, like you said, and he's very slick stand-up. So this will be a very, very tough fight.
Now, you touched briefly, when you were talking about the last fight that you had with Sam, you touched there about you were thinking about retiring. How long do you see yourself fighting for?
Well, I tell you, everybody, Joe Silva said once, that every professional athlete, regardless of what sport it is, comes to an end. And I think Randy went above and beyond what a lot of fighters do and accomplish. But, I still get excited to fight. Still makes me nervous, and I think as long as I'm still scared and I'm still nervous to fight, that it's in me. The day that I'm not afraid to fight anymore, I think that will be the true time I should quit. Or if I start taking unnecessary beatings, and then, that I'm hoping that people be honest enough with me in my camps and in my personal life to tell me, hey, it's time to, to do something else. But for right now, and I'm very straight and forward to everybody that's around me, and I tell them once I'm starting to slow down, what's right now, and once things become apparent that I'm getting beat up in the room, getting beat up in the fights, that's going to be it. So Of course, stuff happens that I had no control over. But right now, I'm 37, just turned 37, so my times are slower because I am getting older. But I think this last fight, I went out there and I did things I was wanting to do, and I honestly felt that I won the fight, even though the judges didn't see it that way, which is all that matters in the end. But I still felt that I did well. Other people thought that I won, and the right people thought. So therefore, I'm gonna go out there and do it. And again, like I said, I'm anxious to fight and I'm scared to fight. So as long as I'm scared and have that mentality, I'm gonna keep doing it.
I think it's great, and I know me as a fan, I know there's more fans out there. Obviously, we want to keep seeing you fighting, and when you keep fighting the way you're fighting, then you can't go no wrong. As long as you've got, like you say, the right people around you that are going to give you honest advice, I think that's what you need. I want to ask you one last question before you go, and this is more of a general question rather than a specific question about you. But obviously, you've been fighting in the UFC for 8 years. You started, way back when. I mean, your first fight was UFC Fight Night 2, and to put it in UFC number terms, your third fight was UFC 58. Could you ever imagine, when you fought back then, that the UFC and the mixed martial arts would grow the way that it has?
Well, I think that is really, I think the sport growing, it really has a lot to do with Dana White. I think by doing this reality show, I remember back when I first started, people really weren't familiar with it, and they still thought it was professional wrestling. They didn't really get it. And I think because of the reality show, everybody turns into it. It's grown tremendously leaps and bounds, and everybody's wanting to do it. And I think, you can't go anywhere anymore without somebody, like people said before, that they know 3 or 4 of the fighters in it, whereas boxing, they might know one name or 2 names. They have, they keep up with the sport. They know who they like. They know their fighters, the fighters' names, and they keep up on what's going on. I think the fans now are more up to it than what I am. There's so many events, but I have people asking all the time, do I know this person? And I really don't. I can't keep up with as much as it is. So to answer your question, I'm happy to take on, but I think a lot of it's due to Dana White in their Ultimate Fighter.
I just want to say it's been so good having the chance to speak with you, and I really appreciate you coming back to me and being able to set this up. Before we let you go, I just want to give you a chance to do some shout-outs. If you want to shout out any friends, family, sponsors, and obviously let people know about your Facebook and your Twitter as well, so the fans can continue to follow you.
Oh, yeah, of course, my wife sets up all my stuff, and she's my manager, so, of course, I have to thank my wife, Emily Fisher, and she also does my strength and conditioning. Well, she does now. So, of course, her more so than anybody. And just everybody, my fans, and, of course, Joe Silva and Dana White for letting me do this again. So, and as far as sponsor goes, every time I get a fight, I usually get different ones, so I don't know who they're coming up for. So keep up with me on Twitter and on Facebook.
Well, obviously, we wish you all the luck for your next fight coming up in July. I know it's a few months out. I think it's going to be a great event and obviously a great fight. And once again, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Spencer.
That was this week's show. I hope you enjoyed those interviews. As you can see, we had some great guests on this week. As always, I'll be working on getting some more big guests on next week. One definitely confirmed for next week, which we're very excited about, is Dwayne Bang Ludwig, another true UFC veteran, and of course now leading coach at Team Alpha Male. So hope you enjoyed them. So definitely come back and check next week's show.